Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for a super special video. So right now we are between Guilds of Ravnica pre-release and the official set release this Friday, which means it is time to talk about the set in various constructed formats, and today is my favorite day. It is Commander Day, which means, as usual, I'm joined by Tomer. How's it going today, Tomer?
I'm doing well, Seth. How are you doing?
I'm doing super well. I always have fun talking about the new Commander cards when we get a new set, and I'm especially excited for this one because I really love Ravnica. But what do you think about this set kind of from a meta perspective? Good Commander set, bad Commander set? How excited are you from a exclusively Commander perspective for Guilds of Ravnica?
I am really excited about this set. More so than Dominaria, to be honest. There's a lot of really powerful cards. They're concentrated in very specific archetypes, I would say. There's not a lot of generally good cards. However, there are some generally good cards, but there's a couple specific archetypes that are going to get a lot of love and attention from this set, and probably different archetypes are going to be getting a lot of attention in the next set, the follow-up set of Ravnica, that the name eludes me right now. But yeah, there's a lot of really good cards. It was very difficult for me to get just the top 10, so I cheated a little bit, and we'll see how that pans out. We're gonna keep it under 30 minutes though, so take it away.
It wouldn't be one of our Commander top 10s without a little bit of cheating and a unfulfilled promise to stick to 30 minutes.
What do you mean? We're all in that 30 minutes.
All right. Well, let's see if we can. Maybe we'll actually hit 30 minutes this time. But don't hold your breath. But let's jump into the list so we actually have some chance of keeping to a reasonable amount of time. Number 10 on our list, we have a new vampire assassin, Atara the Silencer. Tomer, is this a commander? Is this one of the 99? What are you doing with this one?
So I think oh man, her name. Etrada? Etrada. I'm gonna go for Etrada. Fight me in the YouTube comments. So Etrada, I think, is definitely a build around me commander. That's where she's going to see the most play. That's where she makes the most sense because her ability is very weird. It can win you the game. It's an alternate way to, it's an alternate way to make an opponent lose the game. And that's a very unique thing that we don't see very often. And that in itself is worthy of talking about. I don't actually like her too much because I think she promotes a very linear, Voltron-y style of play, which I personally would not gravitate towards. Most notably because it's going to get you a lot of hate. When people are going to be reading this card, they're going to go, okay, exile target creature, player controls, great hit counter, lose the game. I don't want to lose the game.
I don't like
She's
losing.
attacking me. I don't want that. That's bad. And you're going to get hated right off the bat. The moment you show Etrada the Silencer in your command zone, people are going to be like, gotta make sure she's not making me lose the game. This
sounds like the kind of card that Vince would play, and then we would attack him, and he'd be like, why are you all attacking me?
And then if we don't attack him, he just wins the game.
Yes.
He's like, why did you attack me? So this is like the Kalia syndrome, except a little bit even more linear than this. So the interesting thing about her to me is that, yeah, she has an interesting way to lose the game, but she has such a weird, clunky way of her getting shuffled back into her library every single time you put a hit, you successfully put a hit. So there's a lot of clunk there. Every single time her triggered ability resolves, you either have to shuffle her into your library or put her back into the command zone, and then she costs 2 more to cast every single time. So really clunky to play. Really interesting to see how people get around that to maximize her potential. Probably, though, I think everybody already solved it. The easiest way to get additional hits on people, so you can get somebody out in 1 or 2 hits rather than 3 hits as you use her normally. One way is to copy her triggered ability with Strionic Resonator. Another way is to use Strionic Resonator and Rings of Bright Hearth to make 2 copies of her triggered ability, and then you one-shot somebody. One way to make sure that she doesn't get shuffled away or put in your command zone is when the triggered ability is on the stack, you can respond by bouncing her. So the triggered ability resolves, a creature gets exiled, a hit counter is put on that card, and Etrada is already in her hand, so she doesn't get shuffled. Or you could also ninjutsu her So Crystal Shard is one way to target bouncer back into your hand. Ninjutsu is one way to replace her with someone like Yuriko or Ninja to the Deep Hours to also bounce her back to your hand. Or you could blink her, for example, like Ghostly Flicker. All sorts of ways to make sure that she isn't being shuffled back into your library or being put in your command zone. Lots of trickery there. And if she does get shuffled into your library, you can use cards like Demonic Tutor to just fetch her back up and put her back into your hand and repeat the process. And obviously haste and hexproof are very important with her. So Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots are staples in this type of deck. And yeah, so that's basically the deck.
That does sound like you pretty much just built the entire deck. So I gotta ask you though, is there any argument to playing this card fairly? Like, do you think, is this just like the go all in, you copy the triggers, you do all this stuff, try to kill people, they try to kill you because they don't want you to make them lose the game? Can you play this at like a vampire deck or just some blue-black whatever style deck in your 99? Or is it exclusively like, this is your commander, you go all in on copying the triggers as much as possible?
I mean, she is a 4 mana, can't be blocked, and whenever she attacks and deals combat damage, you can exile target creature the player controls. So, I mean, there's a lot of value in that for that shell, even if you're not trying to win the game with somebody. So you could run her in, say, the 99 of Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, because she is an excellent ninjutsu card. She enables ninjutsu very well. And even if she isn't enabling it ninjutsu, she's exiling a creature, which is always really nice. So you could run her in that. My main fear is that the moment that somebody sees her in play, the moment that somebody gets a hit counter on her, they're going to be irrationally afraid of you. Well, not even irrationally, because there is a rational reason to start hating out the person who has a Radha, because, you know, she can still win the game. So it's not irrational, but like, people might just give you more hate than, say, some more benign looking threats. So that is my main fear with her. She's going to get a lot more hate than she deserves in some opinion, in some situations.
Let's move on to number 9 on our list. We have another black card, and this one just kind of an innocent little uncommon Plague Crafter. What do you think about this one, Tomer?
So I would say commander staple for sacrifice decks for a very long time, and graveyard decks, has been Fleshbag Marauder. It essentially does the exact same thing as Plague Crafter. Costs 3 mana for a 3/1. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. And that's where the text ends. And when I saw Plague Crafter, for some reason, my brain just read that part, and it was like, oh, it's just a Fleshbag Marauder reprint. Okay, that's interesting, I guess. And then I just continued on my way. And then it was pointed out to me multiple times that there's actually more text. It's sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. And if the person can't sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, they discard a card. So you're always getting value out of this card, making it way better than the other 2 Fleshbag Marauders that are available to us at 3 mana. So this is probably a new staple in sacrifice decks and graveyard decks. This is an ability that having a repeatable edict effect available to you in a creature form is just so powerful. It's so good. It's not always going to be effective against every single opponent. For example, it gets really, really bad against token players where they have just a multitude of 1/1 tokens that they're more than happy to remove. But against the average deck, each creature is going to be pretty important to them. And losing any of them is going to be pretty bad for them. Especially losing a planeswalker is going to be pretty bad for them. And if they don't have a board state, they still discard a card. It's great. It's great. It's a great card. It's a staple.
Well, let's move on. Number 8 on our list, we have our first mythic of the day, Mnemonic Betrayal. And oh man, this is like the reverse version of Yawgmoth's Will, where you get everyone else's graveyard, but you do it to everyone. So Tomer, what are you imagining with this new mythic in Commander?
I think this is just so flexible. Like oh man, I'm so bad with names right now, but there's a red pirate that basically has a similar effect where you can basically use it's a Snapcaster mage.
Dire Fleet Daredevil.
There we go. And I loved using it. It was always very effective. I've always enjoyed pillaging other opponents' graveyards for value, because when you have multiple opponents, chances are somebody's going to have something good that you're going to want in a clutch situation. Just an answer, the perfect answer for the board state, or the perfect card that you need at the moment. Like, it just opens up your card options so much that you're always going to get a really good value out of it. So that one, Diluvian Primordial, same thing. Mnemonic Betrayal, however, is the most flexible of all. For just 3 mana, everybody's graveyard is now open to you, and you could just, even if you choose just the best card out of all of them and play it, chances are it was a very good spell to cast. But as the game goes on, as more lands are available to you, you have more mana, and there's more things in the graveyard, you can start casting more and more stuff with Mnemonic Betrayal. And also, if an opponent is, let's say, a Spellslinger deck or a graveyard deck, and they're just filling their graveyard for you, again, the options just keep opening up and getting just out of control with how big this spell can be. Early on, it's going to be a great utility spell to get just a nab just 1 or 2 spells that are really important for you. Later on, it can basically be a finisher as you just recast everything in your opponent's graveyard with a lot of mana at your disposal. It doesn't have a specific deck that it's going to be like a card that is going to be a staple in. It's good in a generic way. It gets better if, let's say, you're playing a mill deck, or you're playing against decks that are like self-mill for whatever reasons, or are just playing like really busted ramp cards and good cards like that.
Yeah, it seems like it's a card that it also seems very good in ramp decks or decks that are making lots of mana, because the more mana you have, the more value you can get out of this. Mm-hmm. And I really like how recently it seems like Wizards has focused for the last maybe year or two on all these cards that kind of let you play your opponent's cards. We had like Dead Man's Chest, we have Gonti, this kind of like becoming a sub-theme. And I really think that's just a cool archetype that's so like on point with the spirit of Commander and the variance of the format, where you gotta depend on your opponents having good cards, but if your opponents do have good cards, then your cards are going to be insane. So I feel like it has some nice flexibility. In the early game, it can be sort of a weird form of graveyard hate, even while getting you 1 or 2 things or helping you set up, like you said, with mana rocks and whatnot. And then in the late game, it's kind of like a villainous wealth almost, or something, where if you cast it and you have a ton of mana, you should be able to win the game, or at least pull really far ahead by just making this massive board. So I think it's a super sweet design. It's very unique, kind of high variance, but I don't really think you got to build around it that much. Apart from making sure you're going to have enough mana to really cast those spells, it seems like you can kind of play it in any deck that has its colors, and it's going to be pretty good. Let's move on. Number 7 on our list. We're entering cheating territory, where we got 2 cards instead of just 1, but that's because the cards work together and fit in the same deck. And in this case, we're talking about tokens decks, I think. March of Multitudes and Divine Visitation, new token staples, Tomer?
I really think so. I think March of Multitudes, not a lot of people are talking about this card, but this is the exact same type of card that I want in my token decks. I really highly value token generators that can generate a huge army at instant speed. The 2 that immediately come to mind, at least in white and green, would be White Sun Zenith and Decree of Justice, both of which that I've used very often. And the reason why I like this so much is basically you can set up for a giant finisher on your turn. You basically don't tap for any mana on your turn, you pass, and then you wait until the end step before your turn, spend all your mana at once to make a giant token army, and then on your follow-up turn, you can start playing your big finisher spell, so your overrun effects. So you make your giant army at end of turn, getting around any sorcery speed removal and board wipes and all that stuff, and then the turn after that, boom, you have your giant army, you buff them up, and you swing for lethal. I've done this many times with my token deck, so I really enjoy instant speed token makers, and this is probably the best one we've ever seen. Due to the convoke cost, every single creature on your battlefield is going to help you make an additional token with this ability. So you can make a lot of tokens, and it's very easy to just play one overrun effect afterwards at your first main phase, then swing for lethal. Like that's where it's going to happen very often, just with March of Multitudes. And even you don't even need an overrun effect. You could have just like Cathar's Crusade already on the battlefield, and then when you cast March of Multitudes, you have this giant giant army, and then on your turn you just swing. So it's going to be really easy to finish games with March of Multitudes. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, I think it's an extremely strong card. It's really, like, it is a White Sun Zenith or a Secure the Waste or whatever one of those instant speed token producers, but it also is kind of like double the number of tokens you have on the battlefield as long as you leave your creatures untapped, because you can tap each one of the tokens you already have to make another token, which makes it incredibly powerful. Like, it's good on its own on an empty board, assuming you make a bunch of mana, which you should, and then it's insane if you already have a decent board going, and then it's really easy to close out the game in the way we were talking about. Lifelink is a nice upside, so I think this is going to be a pretty easy inclusion in token decks, and it happens to work really well with our cheat card on this slide, Divine Visitation. If you March of Multitudes with a Divine Visitation out, you probably just definitely win the game when you untap. No overrun necessary.
Oh yeah, easily win the game. Just like have 10 4/4 angel creature tokens at the very minimum, and you swing with them 40 damage at the very minimum. Yeah, that's gonna close it out.
So with Divine Visitation, Tomer, is this a ultra, like, when I think of token stacks, I think of Doubling Season, Anointed Procession, Parallel Lives as kind of like the ultra staples. Those are enchantments that you play in every single token deck. They're just so insane. Is Divine Visitation on that level? Is this the Doubling Season / Anointed Procession of Guilds of Ravnica that you just always put in every single token deck you build in Commander?
It really depends on the type of token deck, but pretty much yes. Like, the average token producer is going to be making 1/1s. So let's say all your token producers are just producing 1/1s, and then you have this 5-mana enchantment that says creatures you control get +3/+3, flying, and vigilance.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good for a 5-mana anthem. Yeah, that's really solid. And yeah, whenever I'm making a token deck, that is how it always goes. The most common generators that I'm running are going to be like March of the Multitudes. It's going to be 1/1s. Yeah, any token deck, it's going to be really good. It also does some really busted things with token generators that care about creature types. So, for example, Ophiomancer says at the beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, put a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. Ooh. So with Divine Visitation on the battlefield, it makes a snake, which immediately becomes, which is instead an angel. And then at the beginning of each upkeep, it checks to see if your angels are snakes, and they're not, so it produces another snake, but that's an angel, and then the next upkeep, it's like, oh, you still don't have any snakes, here's an angel, and it just keeps going. And very similar is Endrick Sar, Master Breeder, which is gonna be, this is my favorite of all of them. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you put X 1/1 Thrall creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. When you control 7 or more Thralls, sacrifice Endrick Sar, Master Breeder. Your Thralls are now angels, so you just make X angels every single time you cast a creature spell, and it gets bonkers, and oh my god, I'm so happy.
Oh, that sounds like a super fun deck. Maybe we'll see some sort of like black-white token deck to take advantage of those synergies. Well, let's move from the world of tokens to the world of Storm. You love your Izzet decks, Tomer, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what these Izzet cards do in Commander?
A lot of people are saying that 1,000-Year Storm is a win more card. And it's true. But you know what, Seth? I like winning more. I like it when I'm casting 5 instants or sorceries, and then it's like, hey, you cast 5 instants or sorceries. Do you want to copy this 5 extra times? And I'm like, yes. I don't care that my opponents are falling asleep at the table. I'm having fun, and that's what matters. And that's what 1,000-Year Storm is for me, Seth. It's not an optimal thing for the most competitive Storm decks. No, it's good for me, and I'm going to be running it in Commander Clash, and I'm going to be timing out because this is fantastic. And that's all I want, Seth. That's all I want.
I love this card too. I think it's super fun. Like, it really just gives all your stuff Storm, which is insane. Even if you're just casting Ponders and Preordains, yes, eventually you're going to draw so many cards. The thing I'm scared of with this card is I'm afraid the correct way to do it is probably like to cast your Ponders and Preordains and then cast your like Time Warp effect and take like 7 extra turns in a row or something. And that is a little less exciting, but I think you can build some really janky build arounds. What I want to play this with, and I'm going to do this in standard, but Brass's Bounty is a card that is really sweet because you make a lot of treasures, which equals a lot of mana. So that's one of my favorite pieces for the 1,000-year Storm deck. So I'm definitely excited to build around it too. Personally, I will avoid just trying to take infinite turns, but you should be able, like, imagine, I think the ultimate goal is something like cast enough spells where you can like cast a gut shot and kill the table, and that might actually be possible with a 1,000-year Storm. So I'm super excited to build around it. What about Runaway Steamkin? Is this part of the Storm deck? Elementals? Mono red aggro and Commander? What are you doing with this one, Tomer?
I think this is also the Storm deck, and I think of the two, this card is probably has more potential to actually be viable in like a more competitive Storm shell. It comes down early. It's an okay-ish blocker as you're casting spells and like kind of setting up your turn. But the turn you really want to go off, you're gonna be casting some red spells, assuming you're an Izzet, like if you're playing Mystics of this Magnus or the new Niv Mizzet or any of those Spellslinger decks. And if you play enough red spells, then this starts generating mana for you to like kind of keep your Storm rolling and then eventually get to your finisher and win in a glorious fashion. It only triggers off red spells and it only gives you red mana, and Storm decks generally want blue to cast mostly blue spells and generate blue mana, so that's not ideal, but it seems still good enough to be worth trying, and I'm going to definitely be trying it because it does scream Storm to me and I'm excited about that. That said, it could also fit in other archetypes, especially like any sort of like mono red build that wants to generate a lot of mana on certain turns. I think this is actually going to be really fun. Like Ashling the Pilgrim, for example, a mono red deck that whenever you take all this extra mana, you basically like turn it into a giant earthquake effect and burn everybody at the table, and including everybody's creatures. I think that could be fun. Maybe an elemental sort of deck too. I'm not quite sure, but the card is interesting enough that I really want to tinker with it, and it's only 2 mana. So it could really fit in a couple different archetypes, and you're not going to feel too bad if it's not like absolutely insane.
I think in Storm, it's somewhat similar to like Brawl or Goblin Electromancer, with some limitations you mentioned. It only really triggers off red spells, but if you're casting red spells, it's kind of that same mana reduction, because every red spell you cast, you're like getting a counter, which is going to get you back that mana once you get to 3 counters. So I think it probably does show up in Storm, assuming you are playing enough red spells to trigger it, because I think you would play more copies of Brawl in your Storm deck if you could, and this is close enough. I think it also is probably okay in just red decks, because even just like playing this on turn 2 and then just kind of casting your stuff for a couple of turns, and then maybe on turn 4 you remove the counters and you get 3 extra mana and you play, I don't know, some big dragon or some Inferno Titan or whatever, using the mana like somewhat fairly. So I feel like it can kind of work there as well. I mean, yes, it could die, but are people really going to spend a premium removal spell on a Runaway Steamkin? It doesn't strike you as that scary if you're not storming off. So I think it could just be a fine ramp spell in a normal red deck too, playing it fairly. Let's move on. Number 5 on our list. Only 1 card this time, but it's a card that draws you more cards. Beast Whisperer, our new Glimpse of Nature, but on creature form. What do you think of this one, Tomer? Is this a combo elf card, or can you play this in basically any green deck that's playing a decent number of creatures?
I think it's the latter. I think it's going to be best in a combo elfy druid type deck, but any creature heavy green deck is going to want to draw cards, and this is one of the most efficient methods of doing so. We've seen green draw cards off casting creatures really a lot of times. This is not like a new concept. We've seen them in creature form with Soul of the Harvest and Primordial Sage, both creatures that are 6 mana and have the exact same ability essentially. And I've played both of those a fair amount. And this is a 4-mana version of it, and it's just amazing. It's so much better. It's a 4-mana version of the exact same ability that I want. It's also similar to Glimpse of Nature, as you said. Probably this is less combo-y than Glimpse of Nature. You also see this ability on Zendikar Resurgent, which is like a finisher ramp card draw thingy very high end on the curve. I think this is the best version out of all of them. If you want to draw cards for casting creature spells, Beast Whisperer is now the best version. And it also comes with the two most relevant creature types that kind of allude to where it's going to be best in. It's going to be best in elf ball decks like Azuri Renegade Leader, where you just want to play like a billion elf mana dorks, and the mana dorks are going to pay for other mana dorks, and you're casting so many of them, and the problem is that you're going to be dumping your hands so quickly. So Beast Whisperer kind of just cantrips all your mana dorks, all your elves, unless you dump your hand while refilling your entire hand. It's essential for what the elf ball wants to do. It wants to reach critical mass on the battlefield and then swing with a giant overrun effect or something similar. Similarly, Seton, Crows and Protector, the Druid Tribal Commander, does the exact same thing. Instead of elves, you have druids. They're all mana rocks, and they all tap for mana, and they all spew out their hands with lots of druids everywhere. And this is a druid, so you can tap it for mana as well to help with the whole thingy. It's great. It's great. It's a new staple.
Well, let's move on. Number 4 on our list. We got another double up. This time we're talking graveyard synergies with the Golgari tribe, highlighted by Doom Whisperer and also Underrealm Lich. So, Tomer, what do you think about these new mythics?
So, of the two, I think Doom Whisperer is more broken, but they're both fitting in graveyard decks, and they're both freaking amazing. So, Doom Whisperer, first of all, the closest thing I can think of is like Gristlebrand. Like, the moment you play this card, you can just start activating its ability for no mana cost at instant speed and just fill your graveyard with whatever you need. Anything that you need, boom, it's in your graveyard now. Be happy. And like, this is probably a lot less busted in Standard maybe, because you have 20 life total starting, but in Commander you have 40, so the cost is halved in a multiplayer format like this one. You can really go ham on this ability, and basically any graveyard deck is going to be salivating to try to put this in its deck as quickly as possible, because it fills your graveyard so fast with key cards that you need. You're like, yeah, it's so good. So not only is it going to be like amazing in just any graveyard deck, but certain ones, specific ones that I'm thinking about. Sidisi Brute Tyrant says whenever a creature goes from your goes into your graveyard, whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Doom Whisperer, every single activated ability in a creature heavy deck like Sidisi Brute Tyrant is basically like pay 2 life, survey 2, put stuff in your graveyard that you want in your graveyard. Oh, and you're also making a zombie token each time you do it. Pretty much, basically. So that's insane. Muldrotha the Gravetide is also salivating. Not only are you just like shoving all the permanents that you could ever want in a Muldrotha deck into your graveyard like ASAP, but also there's a combo that people are talking about already with Second Chance. Second Chance is an enchantment that says during your upkeep, if you have 5 life or less, sacrifice Second Chance and take an extra turn after this one. So in a Muldrotha deck, you can use Doom Whisperer, just play Doom Whisperer, take your life total down below 6, so 5 or less, and put Second Chance in your graveyard or on the battlefield from your hand or whatever. And then Second Chance will trigger, and then you just replay it every single turn with Muldrotha and take extra turns infinite number of times. So Ooh. That's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, that sounds very good.
It's silly. Like, Doom Whisperer's auto including every single graveyard deck.
And you get a 6/6 flying trample for 5, which is also like a good body too. Like, there's not much there's like no downside to this card. If you think about it, like in Commander, you should be able to probably activate the ability at least 10 times, maybe 15 times, which that's a huge chunk of your library going into your graveyard. And then you mentioned a million ways to abuse that, and that doesn't even include like Living Death, Living End, any reanimation stuff. There's like so many things that you could do with your graveyard. So I think this card is just absurd in Commander and incredibly powerful. What about Underrealm Lich? This one I think is not as powerful as Doom Whisperer, but you can still do some sweet shenanigans and kind of filter your draws and do some cool things. What do you think about that one, Tomer?
Yeah, Underrealm Lich doesn't automatically win you the game the moment it enters the battlefield. You still have to draw cards. You still have to draw cards and start feeding it to make sure it starts giving you value like Doom Whisperer, which is just broken. It was just silly. But back to Underrealm Lich. Yeah, basically any graveyard deck, again, is going to be thrilled, over the moon to run Underrealm Lich because it just fills your graveyard so quickly with value, and then you use that graveyard to do other busted things. Like you said, like set up a big living death, set up good things to reanimate and just shenanigans. It's silly. It's also card filtering too. Whenever you draw a card, you look at the top three and you take one of those and put it into your hand, or you select which ones go into your graveyard. Like that's huge, great card draw filtering in just about any deck. For a 5-mana creature, but it's just especially nutty in a graveyard deck.
Yeah, I think the pay for life for Indestructible, that's another one of those abilities, kind of like Doom Whisperer. In Standard and Modern, that's a big chunk of your life total, but in 4D life, you can kind of get away with that a little bit better. And the upside of turning all of your draws into basically strategic plannings, where you get to mill 2, take the best card, can let you do some incredibly powerful things with card draw effects, really. Like, if one of the examples that people have been talking about is Sylvan Library, where you get to see 9 cards and keep 3 of them every turn, which that's filling your graveyard really quickly and filling your hand really quickly. And that's not even including just other card draw effects. It seems really easy for this to be mill like 6 or 8 cards each turn and really improve your draws along the way. So I feel like this is another just auto include in any green-black graveyard type deck. And I think if you're in any green-black deck, it's probably at least in the conversation, and it even has some relevant creature types. I mean, Zombie, Elf, and Shaman, especially Zombie and Elf, are both tribes that see play in Commander, so you might get some fringe upside there as well. Let's move on to number 3 on our list, and here we got a pretty simple one. Assassin's Trophy. I mean, I don't know.
Not surprised.
I mean, I don't even know how much you can say about this card. It just kills anything for 2 mana. What do you think about this one in Commander, Tomer?
It's a multi-format all-star for a reason. The thing that I really like about this is not only does it get rid of every non-land permanent, but it can actually hit lands, and that's a modern design philosophy that that Wizards has really stayed away from. They don't like letting you destroy lands. But in this case, you're giving them a land anyway, so I think that's how they justified it. You're allowed to destroy any permanent, including lands, because you are going to be giving them a land afterwards. And it's a basic land. And yeah, ramping your opponent isn't the best, but removing any of their best permanents on the battlefield for a unquestionably way worse permanent in exchange is always worth it for 2 mana at instant speed. This is a new staple. It's going to be the most played card from the set, no question about it. Any Golgari deck is going to want to seriously consider running this removal spell. If you don't run it, you're probably wrong to not run it. If you can afford it, obviously. If you're going like super budget, then yeah, that's a valid excuse. I might not run it for thematic reasons in some fringe situations, but again, I'd be wrong to do so. I'm just deciding to make a jankier deck for that purpose. Like, this is an auto-include. It's new auto-include.
I think you literally just play this in 100% of your decks that can cast it. Like, it's very hard for this to ever be bad. You can even imagine scenarios where if it couldn't hit lands, maybe you play against all spell-based combo decks. But Assassin's Trophy, it is never bad, because worst case, you get a bounce land. You get some non-basic land that your opponent's taking advantage of. So I think you literally, except for those exceptions you said, if there's a flavor thing or a budget thing, that's different. But if you're trying to build an optimal deck, I think you just play this literally 100% of the time that you can cast it.
Yeah, at the very least, you just destroy every single one of Vince's Karus.
Yes, that's the main thing I'm excited about. Snapcaster, flash it back, and just do it again. Maybe copy it on the stack a few times.
Just all this stuff.
Let's move on to number 2 on our list. We have one of the sweetest legends from the set. Definitely one of the spiciest, that's for sure. Lozad the Multifarious. Tomer, what are you shapeshifting into with this new Dimir mythic?
So, Lozad is so open-ended. He kind of reminds me of Marcel the Pretender in terms of just like what you can do with him. He can do anything, which is just fun in terms of a brewer's fun house, essentially. Like, you can just do whatever you want. any weird combos and thingies you could put in the graveyard, Lazav can turn into, and it's just fun time. So, a lot of people, and this is probably going to be the best way of building him, a lot of people are thinking about making Lazav more of a Voltron commander. You know, you stick him in your command zone, and then you play a Lazav. It only costs 2 mana, by the way, which is insane for all the sweetness that he's available to do. So you play Lazav, and then you, for example, attack with Lazav and just turn into a giant creature and deal commander damage. Or you could one-shot somebody with Infect, for example. You could attack, turn Lazav into a Vector Asp, activate its ability to give Lazav Infect until end of turn, and then turn into a Phyrexian Dreadnought to hit for 12 poison counted because it's a 12/12 creature. And I think Vector Asp is like, it's a 1-mana creature, and Phyrexian Dreadnought is a 1-mana creature, and activating Vector Asp's ability to give it Infect is only 1 black mana. So that's 3 mana total to one-shot an opponent with 12 poison counters.
Yeah, like,
that's pretty insane.
In theory, you can Tome Scour yourself or something on turn 1 to get those 2 cards in the graveyard, play this on turn 2 and win on turn 3. Like, that's a pretty like, it's not going to happen that often because you're not going to mill the correct cards all that often, but that is the dream draw. And if you build with your Doom Whisperers and some of those cards we've been talking about that can stock your graveyard so quickly, that's going to be something that can happen pretty consistently, like in the mid-game, and just one-shot people. And there's a lot of sweet combos like that, and that doesn't even include just kind of doing fun shenanigans, like changing creature types is sweet. You kind of have like an extra copy of Necrotic Ooze to some extent, where you can steal like activated abilities and do cool things that way. So it seems like a potentially pretty busted combo commander, but also you can just like play fun stuff with Lazav too, and just like copy cool things and do fun things that way. So seems like a really powerful commander because it's so cheap. At 2 mana, you can recast it multiple times if it dies. It doesn't look especially scary, and you might be able to surprise some people by milling some cards out of nowhere, then all of a sudden having like that one-shot kill. So it seems like a really fun, open-ended Dimir commander.
Yeah, my personal goal is going to be killing somebody with Phage the Untouchable, just copying Phage the Untouchable and then bam, because it's just an old school value. And also, I love the fact that not only is just 2 mana to cast, so, you know, even if he gets removed from the battlefield a couple times, you can still recast him in, and that still justifies building around him heavily. But he also has so much built-in defense if you're stacking your graveyard correctly. For example, if you need Hexproof, you can turn into an Invisible Stalker. Or if you need to get Evasion, you turn into an Invisible Stalker. And if you are going to be facing a board wipe, you can turn into an indestructible creature like Bantu the Glorified. If attacking isn't really your thing, you can find ways to bounce Lazav an infinite number of times. He has a Surveil ability on his Enter the Battlefield trigger, so you can just like, you know, self-mill yourself infinite number of times, and then turn into a Laboratory Maniac and win the game. Like, there's so many ways of doing it. He's basically like the shapeshifter version of Scion of the Ur-Dragon, where, yes, you could build him very competitively, or you could just go for these obscure shenanigans and just make him just like a good, like, value control commander, too. It's just whatever you feel like, really.
Anyway, let's move on. Number 1 on our list, and Tomer, as soon as spoilers came out, I knew this card would be number 1 on our list. I knew there was no chance it would be anything else. New Niv-Mizzet Parun. Tomer, what do you think about our new Izzet legend?
So I'm an Izzet fanboy. So obviously, yeah, the Parun, my captain, is on top. Niv-Mizzet Parun is the best of all 3 of the Niv-Mizzets. First, when I started playing Commander, this is like 2012, so this is a while back in my day when Commander was young, and we called it Elder Dragon, and we liked that. No, it actually was still Commander. So Niv-Mizzet, the Firemind, the first iteration of Niv-Mizzet was actually one of the original boogeymen of the format. He was played a lot, he was very popular, and people always rate him as like a wheel commander that also had combo potential. You put Curiosity on him, you tap him, you deal 1 damage, you draw a card which deals 1 damage, which draws a card, you win the game, it's really fun, everybody's happy. Well, you're happy, but everybody else is not happy. So he was the original boogeyman. Then we got Niv-Mizzet Draco Genius, which, you know, was like the fair version of Niv-Mizzet the Firemind. Wasn't very combo. They consciously stayed away from being just like an absurd combo commander. And then obviously nobody played him because he's too fair. Now we have Niv-Mizzet the Perun, which is very similar to Niv-Mizzet the Firemind. It has the exact same bit of text where whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet does 1 damage to any target. So you can still do the curiosity combos. He's still amazing with wheel shenanigans. The more cards you draw, the more damage he deals. Really great stuff. The main thing that changed here is the color cost. Casting cost is more restrictive. It requires another blue and another red. Same total converted mana cost, it's just more color intensive, which isn't any sort of difficulty if you just have him as your commander, because you're an Izzet deck, you're an Izzet mana base. Making triple blue, triple red is not going to be a difficult thing, but because it is more color restrictive, now it gets even better. It gets even better than the original. It can no longer be countered, so that's one thing you don't have to worry about when comboing off and just winning the game. It's slightly bigger, which is whatever. And instead of tapping to deal 1 damage, which is it's whatever, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. Whenever a player, not just you, casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. What? Why? It's so good. What?
Yeah,
why whenever a player? What?
That ability is so insane. It is. Oh man, it adds so much potential to it. You can do all those things you were talking about, but you can also play this as like a weird storm commander where you're trying to cast a lot of spells on your own, and it has like a built-in grape shot, because as you're casting these spells, you're drawing cards and you're pinging your opponent. So it's basically a grape shot sitting out on a body that's also drawing you tons of cards. It is so insane. There's just so many sweet things. So it does everything the old Niv-Mizzets do, and enables entirely new style of Niv-Mizzet archetypes. And really, I mean, oh man, there's nothing better in Commander than drawing cards. And it's a commander that just wins you the game for drawing cards. That's like, what could be better?
It's the best, Seth. Like, I saw this card and I'm like, you know what? I cannot play this in my play groups. I cannot, because it's too strong. But then I realized I have to build this set. I don't even care if I don't even get to play it. It's going to be like framed on my shelf, you know. I'm going to have this shrine to Niv-Mizzet. You know, the guild signa is going to be over. I'm going to have this beautiful box. I'm never going to play this deck. I'm gonna maybe goldfish with it once in a while, just to bring me to my happy place. Do like some daily meditation when I wake up. Just shuffle through my deck, look at the glory of Niv-Mizzet, and that will be my ritual, my morning ritual every single day. So yeah, I'm building the deck. It's fantastic. It's the best Niv-Mizzet ever. I think it's gonna be a storm deck. Like, drawing 2 cards whenever I ponder is gonna be insane. Whenever I'm casting like High Tide and Turnabout, I'm now cantripping. Whenever I'm desperate ritualing, I'm cantripping. It's just like, it's silly. Like, you don't even need, it's so crazy. It's crazy.
And it avoids,
I love it.
It even avoids counters, which is like probably the easiest way to fizzle that combo, is just someone leave up a counter and stop your Niv-Mizzet, and Niv-Mizzet even stops that. So it does seem busted.
They need instant speed answers, and you just cut out the best instant speed answers. You're just like, blue players, just step aside.
Yeah.
Let me play solitaire for 20 minutes. It's okay. It's okay. Take a bathroom break.
And then throw in 1,000-Year Storm, and who knows what happens.
Yeah, whatever. Just have fun.
Oh man. Well,
it's so good.
I think that brings us to the end of our top 10 list for Commander from Guilds of Ravnica. So Tomer, any last thoughts on anything except Niv-Mizzet on the way out the door today?
So, as you can tell from the list, I think Selesnya tokens got a big boost. I think Spellslinger, Storm in particular, got some sweet cards, most notably Niv-Mizzet in terms of like playability. I think that card is fantastic. I love it. Golgari, I think, was the biggest winner. Graveyard decks were the biggest winner. They had a lot of sweet additions to throw into their decks of all different types. The biggest loser, I think, is unsurprisingly Boros. you could notice that there's not a single Boros card that I'm actually really excited about. There's like Tajik, which is I'm very borderline on. You could play like an Earthquake deck around him, and that's like, I've already done that a billion times. I'm not too excited. I think Mentor is like just not, it doesn't scale well. Like the problem, okay, here's rant time about Boros. So I don't really care about what you want to do with Boros in terms of design. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, Boros is all about attacking all the time. That is boring. But no, we got Tiana, which was about auras and vehicles kind of, but mostly about auras. We got Depala, which was about dwarves and vehicles. We got Archangel Avocet, which was like a board wipe commander. We got a whole bunch of different ways to build Boros recently. Like they've been really good about just showing other ways of making Boros commanders that aren't about attacking. So it's okay to sometimes go back to let's attack type thing, just like it's okay for Izzet to be about instants and sorceries a lot of the times too. So I'm okay with that. My main thing for commander is I want Boros commanders that scale well with multiplayer. That's all I want. Because once we no longer have 20 player life totals, 1 versus 1, and we move it to 40 player life totals, and then we add multiple opponents, Boros, the thing that Boros does needs to scale towards that. A lot of the other guilds, they kind of get around that by being combo decks. Like Niv Mizzet doesn't really care how many opponents there are, because he's just going to combo off and win. Same with Golgari. And Selesnya is just like so efficient and making giant tokens that whatever, you can have like 5 extra people. They're still going to have 50-50 angels and like a giant army of it, and they're going to win. Boros, however, is like, ooh, we got Mentor.
Yeah.
Ooh, we got +1/+1 counters, guys. Yeah. Oh, 4/5 flying vigilance for 4. Isn't that so good? No, it's not good. Just like they've done it before. They've been like the melee ability where creatures get +1/+1 for each opponent you're attacking. We could have had something like that. We could have had there's another one. There's an angel that's indestructible and gets +3/+3 for each opponent that's less than half its starting life total. Again, these creatures are all about attacking, but they scale based on the opponents, and that's the key thing. If you're about attacking and dealing a set amount of damage, your damage has to go up based on the number of opponents you have. That's just like common sense, and we didn't get that. We didn't get that with Boros, so that's why Boros is bad in Commander.
I think,
and maybe one day.
I think Wizards is just they've come to grips with the fact that no one plays Boros in Commander. If you're playing Commander, you're drawing cards. Boros doesn't draw enough cards, so why even try? Just make good Boros cards for Standard and let everyone play their Niv Mizzet and Graveyard shenanigans in Commander.
You know what was the most insulting thing, Seth? Is because we could have made Boros the equipment archetype. And then equipment is great for Commander because you can play a lot of busted old equipments and really do busted things. You can assemble Cauldron. Everybody's happy. You know who's the best equipment commander, Seth? Nazan. Nazan is a Selesnya commander. What does green ever have to do with equipments? Nothing. Never has green ever supported equipments, but yet the best equipment commander is in Selesnya? What? Why?
Yeah, green is the best at blowing up equipment.
It's the best at blowing up the equipment. It's the best at summoning Cauldron. It's the best at the equipments. And like, Boros, you have Sunforger. You have cool things. Why can't you do cool things for Commander too? Why can't you just say instead of opponent, each opponent? Just do that. Just, oh man, what a waste. What a waste. What a waste.
Well, on that note, that brings us to the end of our top 10 Guilds of Ravnica cards for Commander. Tomer, it's always fun. Thanks for doing it. Everyone, thank you for watching. And we'll be back in a few months to talk about the rest of the guilds. In the meantime, you can check out Tomer's complete set reviews over on the website. I will link them in the video, so if you want a fuller breakdown of Guilds of Ravnica in Commander, make sure to check them out. They're pretty sweet. So again, thanks, Tomer. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.